I remember speaking with a hospice doctor about regrets that people had at the end of their lives. And a lot of the regrets that kept coming back were, I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time working at my job or working in general. What else is out there besides worker? Like, let's find it and have some fun while doing it.
Hello, friends. This is Tyler Gardner welcoming you to another episode of your Money Guide on the Side, where it is my job to simplify what seems complex, add nuance to what seems simple, and learn from and alongside some of the brightest minds in money, finance, and investing. So let's get started and get you one step closer to where you need to be. Today's guest is someone I owe a serious debt of gratitude to. And I don't mean the 22% APR kind. Andy Hill hosts the podcast Marriage, Kids, and Money. And, thankfully for me, for people who just are obsessed with reading and love everything about personal finance, he's got a book coming out January 21st with Wiley called Own Your Time, which I have read and I think is a must-read for everyone. But here's why this conversation matters to me. Andy was one of the very first people to take me seriously when I was just starting out in this space. Back when I was creating content in my basement, 0 followers, wondering if anyone would ever care about index funds and compound interest. Andy was willing to completely nerd out with me about personal finance for hours and invited me on his show to share as much as I could about the finance industry. He didn't have to do that, but he did. And honestly, I wouldn't be here without conversations like those. So in this conversation, we talk about finding the middle path between retiring at 30 after saving 90% of your income and grinding it out in the corporate world until you're 70. We explore why it's so important to spend a few minutes each day dreaming about what you actually want to do with your life, and why it's equally important to identify as early and as often as possible what you don't want to do with your time and your money. For a highly practical, engaging, and action-oriented money playbook from one of my single favorite voices in this space, I give you my conversation with Andy Hill. I'm going to start with just the punchline because you currently are basically living what at least I would dub a dream life of working 20 to 25 hours a week. Your wife's working part-time as an esthetician, and you're both financially secure enough that you're not losing sleep over money. So I'm even going to pause there and just let that one sink in with the audience for a minute. But tell me this, how old are you? And how the heck did you pull this off without winning the lottery or selling a tech company?
I love that. Yeah. Both of us are 43. And yes, it took about 10, 15 years for us to figure it out. But really, at the end of the day, we went from working 2 full corporate jobs as well as being married and having 2 kids and just kind of looking at each other and being like, is this how life is supposed to be? This feels like a trap and it feels like we can't breathe. So how do we move to something that just feels a little bit more natural and allowing us to breathe? So we wanted to create a life that felt like that. And to us, working part-time, working a few days a week, still allow us to make money and do work that we enjoy and also be able to breathe, take care of our health, take care of our marriage. It's a wild concept, but we wanted to put that out there as our North Star. And so in between year 0 and year 15, we had to do a lot of steps that helped us to continue to move in that direction. It wasn't overnight, but as you know, taking 1% improvements over time can move mountains.
What were some of those improvements? So yeah, tell me a little bit about from the moment that you decided, I'm kind of done with this, or at least I want to challenge this corporate world, to when you have lived into the description that I just read before. What were some of the steps you took annually to get to this place where you feel, again, you're able to sleep, you're financially secure, and you work less than all of us and have 4-day weekends?
Yeah. In the beginning, it was the dreaming part. It was kind of saying, what is that big goal? And how will this help us to have a better life? So spending time with my spouse, with my wife on that moment, sitting down together, making time for that, because that was very difficult in the beginning of our relationship. We'd just move, we'd be working, we'd be taking care of the kids, and then we'd, then crash at the end of the day. So it was really carving out time and just sitting with each other and asking those big questions like, where do we see ourselves in 5 to 10 years? How do we feel like our life could be better? And for her, at the time when we started, it was, I'm working a 60-hour-a-week job. I am currently pregnant, and I hate my job and my clients. Like, how do I get out of this mess? And so I grabbed onto that early on to support her and say, hey, here's some financial moves that we can make to help us get in that direction where you could start off going part-time and then eventually full-time stay-at-home mom. And that was her goal, her dream. She wanted to be able to spend a lot more time with our daughter as she came into the world. So for us, the first step was like finding that why, finding that dream, and then saying, okay, this is worth pursuing. So we started looking at those numbers in and out and saying, okay, what do we need to change in order for us to move in that direction? And going forward from that moment, we started saving a lot more of our money and moving it towards helping us to achieve those things. So in the beginning, it was my $30K of student loans. It was her $20K of a car loan. You know, these were status symbols that we wanted in our lives. I wanted to feel really, really smart and have an MBA and say, I have an MBA. Pay me more money potentially in the corporate world. We both wanted to have a fancy luxury car because we're in our 20s. And of course, that's what you need. You need a fancy luxury car. But we were faking, right? We were faking that because we didn't actually have the money to do those things. So first thing first was get that dream out there, create the budget, create the plan. And then for us, after that, it was start to attack our debt to eliminate that as fast as possible. And when we got laser focused doing that, we were able to eliminate those two debts within a year.
I spent my late 20s renting in Vermont while maxing out my retirement accounts and building a taxable brokerage. And the whole time, there was this nagging feeling every month. I'm spending thousands on rent and getting absolutely nothing back for it. Turns out that's not true anymore. Built is a loyalty program that turns your rent payments into actual rewards. Flights, hotels, fitness classes, Amazon purchases, or my personal favorite, SoulCycle classes. I know that sounds absurdly specific, but starting my day with a hard workout in a room full of strangers who are also suffering, that's happiness. And if you're sitting there saying, that's great, Tyler, but I'm 50 and I have what we adults like to call a mortgage. Well, good news for you too, my friends. You can now earn Built points on your mortgage payments starting in February. So this isn't just for renters anymore. It's for anyone paying to live somewhere, which is, well, most of us. Plus, Built has partnerships with over 45,000 restaurants, fitness studios, pharmacies, and local businesses where you can use your points. So whether you're renting, paying a mortgage, or just trying to make the money you're already spending work a little bit harder for you, Built makes it simple. Join the loyalty program at joinbuilt.com/Tyler. That's joinbilt.com/Tyler. And make sure you use that link so they know who sent you. So you talk a little bit about kind of the order of operations that you prescribed for yourself and for your wife and your family. Obviously, one, defining what it is you want to move towards. The second, tackling some of that high interest debt that we know obviously can be an emergency for many. But beyond the debt, were there ever moments where you and your wife disagreed on kind of what is the next step of cost cutting? Was there something that you said actually like, well, like this I do kind of like spending money on, and she's like, we could cut that and be just fine?
Yeah, Tyler, I mean, that's actually how I started. I said, hey, babe, I've been researching and I think we can build our net worth and eliminate our debt and grow our savings rate if we just get rid of your car and start spending less on dinners and stuff. Does that sound great? And I swear, Tyler, she came home from work one of those days and I start spilling this stuff on her right when she walks through the door. And she just looks at me and then completely walks away. It's like, and I'm like, what? What's this a perfect idea? What's going on? And it wasn't until I started realizing, like, I'm not speaking from her perspective, man. I'm just talking numbers and I'm talking deprivation. Like, what am I going to take away as opposed to what we're actually going to be gaining? So I think that was a big mistake in my beginning because I got all numbers focused and I got very mathy about it. So it wasn't until I flipped the script on how we were talking about what she was going to gain by doing these things. But a lot of it, too, wasn't just like, what can we take away from our lives? It became like, how can we grow our income so that we can make this easier? Because you can only take away so much until it starts to feel so painful that you're like, what am I doing this for again? So for me at work, it was like, okay, what can I do to bust my butt while my wife is creating a life in our home and grow my income? So that became, what can I do to get a raise? What can I do to get bonuses? So I became very focused over the next 5 years to grow my income as much as possible. And I think I boosted my income, our household income during that time, to an average of around $180,000 between my wife and I between year 0 and year 10. Now, she was in and out of the workforce for that, full-time in the beginning, no time as stay-at-home mom with regard to her income, but obviously plenty of time working because being a stay-at-home mom is a lot more work than my corporate job, and then back into part-time near the end of that 10-year streak. But yeah, we were around $180,000. That helped a lot. But with that, we said, okay, what can we do to save, invest, a good chunk of that? So for a period of time, it was like 40-50% of our income. And that was a big driver in helping us move towards this life that we do have now. That being said, I got a little too fiery about the whole thing, little financial independence, retire early movement about it, because this was in like the mid 2015s, 2017s, 2018s. And I think I took it a little too far, because it became not only what can I do to increase my income, but also let's see other areas that I can do in the budget to decrease our expenses even more as we now have 2 kids. And that's when things started to get a little hairy in our relationship, so much so that the marital fights started to happen a lot more. Not only was I pressing our dollars, but we were also pressed for time, another very important resource that we don't pay attention to enough. So we weren't communicating, we weren't spending enough time together, and that forced her to say, hey, Andy, I really think we need to go to marriage counseling. This is something that is not working for me, and we need to figure this out. So that was a tough moment, but it ended up being a very important moment in our relationship.
And just to go back for a moment, and then I want to pick up on exactly what you just said, but to go back, can you just describe, because I know what you're talking about as far as getting too fiery, right? Like I can picture, I'm like, oh gosh, you were one of those guys.
Oh yeah.
But can you describe for the people listening who aren't as familiar with the fire movement to begin with, B, what it might mean in a relationship to get too fiery and where it can go as an extreme on that end?
Yeah. So for me at that time, I was so uninspired by my corporate career. And then at home, I had probably a 2-year-old, the 4-year-old at the time. So I had a lot of demands when I got home. So for me, I just felt completely crushed for my time. I didn't have any time. So my mental state was, well, I don't want to get rid of my kids and my wife, right? I love them, but maybe I'll get rid of that corporate job. So the solution out there that I kept hearing about through podcasts or books or anything like that was the financial independence movement. And that was, hey, save and invest extremely aggressively for a short period of time. And then for the next, 40, 50 years, you don't have to work at all. You can live off your investments. And so, that calculation of, hey, save $1 million, and then you can use that 4% rule and live off of $40,000 per year. So there's 2 problems there. Getting the $1 million really fast is hard. And then the second problem is, I don't know about your life, but I can't live on $40,000, and I'm sure my wife wouldn't want to live on $40,000 per year. Okay, so then $2 million, then you can live at $80,000. You know how hard it is for the average person to make $2 million in a short period of time? So the math just wasn't mathing, but I went for it anyway, which caused some problems in our marriage, so much so that we did go to marriage counseling, and it felt like a failure for me in the beginning. But the 9 months that we spent dedicated time together and really essentially block off an hour a month to have a conversation was the best thing for our relationship. And through that, we really found some good middle ground. She understood my situation. I felt trapped. I really did. And then I understood her situation. Hey, man, I love you, but I don't want to live in this deprivation kind of world when we're doing so well financially. Why do we have to feel so pinched? we found a great middle ground after those conversations. And that's kind of where we headed over the next 5-10 years in our relationship.
Well, and let's pick up there and talk more about the middle ground, because I think one of the main objections I personally have to the FIRE movement is kind of exactly what you just said, right? A, good luck for the average person getting $2 million by the time they're 30 or 40. I mean, that is for so many people, it is just impossible, and your head's in the sand if you think it can happen. But then secondly, even with $2 million, $80,000 is lower than the national median income salary right now. And with 2 kids, best of luck. Like these days, best of luck looking at home prices and now our 50-year mortgages that are coming
Absolutely.
out. But I'm wondering, when did you decide that there was kind of this, I know we could call it the way or the middle path, or this kind of distinct path between, let me do everything I can to get $2 million, live off of $80K, ruin my marriage, etc., versus being in this corporate grind until 65 and resenting life in general and this whole process of never having our time?
I think it was adjusting my mindset to say, well, I don't mind working. I like working. I like working on work that I enjoy, though. And so I started to realize that I don't have to cease working. And that was kind of a relieving moment, Tyler. I was like, oh, you don't have to just stop working in order to hit this goal. You could just work less. And so I started to actually connect with people who had been working part-time, either through their employer or through creating their own small business, solopreneur business, where they were managing their time, call it 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week. I even met with people who were consultants or freelancers that said, hey, I work seasonally. And I'm like, wow, that's an inspiring middle ground between working this traditional path where you're working in the corporate world for 40, 50 years, and then you retire and maybe enjoy 10 of it, or, hard charging FIRE path where you kind of, feel good for about 10, 15 years, but then you have, the opportunity to do nothing for 40, 50 years. I wanted to find that middle ground. And these people that I talked to, that I connected with, were so inspiring. And I said, oh, okay, well, maybe there's a middle path where, yes, it's important to save and invest until you get to a point. And then, since you front-loaded those investments, they can really grow on their own through time and compound interest and still get you to that path of retirement in your 60s. And I learned about this term called coast FIRE. And it's sort of this middle ground of the FIRE movement. It's sort of born from the FIRE movement, but probably from people who are like, well, that was too intense. Let me try something that's a little softer and more, honestly, more realistic, really, for being honest with ourselves. So this path essentially says, save and invest until you get to a point where your investments can grow by themselves through time and compound interest and still get you to that point. So for us, this was around $500,000 by age 40. And then we started to do some calculations in just a simple compound interest calculator to say, what if we just stopped contributing to this IRA, 401k, HSA, depending on which tax advantaged account you're looking at? And what would happen if we just let it cook for the next 20 years until we're 60? And we found out, man, we're going to have probably 2 million plus at age 60. And that actually gets us to that, original FIRE goal when we're older. And by that time, because we had already moved towards eliminating our debt and eventually eliminating our mortgage, our expenses were so low that it said, wow, actually $2 million at age 60 or 65, that's going to be plenty for us to live on in the future. And of course, you want to use this calculation using like a real rate of return. So you're factoring in inflation and everything that goes into it. So you're being realistic about what money looks like in 20 to 25 years. But that was kind of a relieving middle ground to say, this could be an opportunity for us. And then the next question that pops up is like, well, if we're not saving and investing in our retirement investments anymore, what can we do with this money? And that was like, whoa, okay. Could we have more fun? Could we go on more vacations? Could we pay off our mortgage? So those were exciting things that helped us move to this sort of middle ground of family financial independence, maybe you could call it, that helped us to move in that way. And it's working really well for us. So we essentially started this plan in January of 2020, and now we're 5 years later, and life has been really good for us.
Do you worry at all, because you call this plan more realistic. And I agree with you that there's definitely that this middle path seems obviously to you get to continue to have some potential security from a job. You also get to continue to prioritize figuring out how to save for the future. But do you worry at all that you are either, and I'm by no means calling you out per se on this, but I'm just really intrigued by this, are you limiting your potential career options or earning power if the market decides to say, hey man, remember that 7% annual real return since 1957? We're done with that. And I don't want to fear monger, and I never will, and I know it's all the data we have. But do you or your family ever worry about what if the script doesn't play out the way that we think mathematically it will here?
Sure. I think that's a very valid concern. And yes, it's not guaranteed. All we have is past market results. We don't have future market results. Things would be a lot easier if we had future market results. But what makes me feel good even doing this, Tyler, is that the mental trick that I've done to my brain is that I've now found work that I enjoy doing, and I feel like I'm going to continue to do this work well past 60 years old. So I guess my three-legged stool would be essentially the investments we've built up. And yes, God willing, we get to 6 or 7% real rate of return. That'd be fantastic, right? And we can live on that. I don't want to ignore the fact that there will be some sort of Social Security in our system in 20 years. It may not be what I'm seeing currently on SSA.gov. Maybe it's 70%, 77%. So there's a little bit there. And then that third stool is the fact that I now do work that I enjoy. Will that work change over the next 20 years? Absolutely. But I look forward to being flexible with it and finding out ways that I can continue supporting people with my platform and making money along the way. So I really feel like I'm not only relying just on that one income stream for my retirement income, I've got these other two as well. And I guess my fourth would be also that my wife has part-time work that she enjoys too on our journey. So I guess we have a lot of things to land on there, even if that convenient math problem for Coast Fire doesn't work out.
And I'll bet you get this question/comment /complaint/challenge about as much as I do, which is you also just summed up what, at least to me, seems obvious, which is why we're all not trying to find a way to get paid to do something we love is beyond me. I sit here and I go, why would that not be the number one goal of life? Forget about getting out of work. Let me just try to find the thing I love doing, get paid enough that I can do it, and do it as long as I want to do it. Yet, so many people challenge that idea of, well, it's not so easy, right? I might not have the skill set to do what I want to do. I might not have found my passion yet, or my passion, I haven't found a way to make money with that passion yet. How do you address that audience member who's sitting there going, Andy, I would love to go make enough money part-time nonetheless to do what I want, to be with my family, to work 20 hours a week. How do I do it? Concretely, can you share any stories or resources of people that could get them started down that path?
Yeah. For the folks that say that's not possible or it's going to be too hard, isn't that a reason to do it? You know what I mean? Like if it's going to be a big change in your life and you feel like you will be happier, don't we all need some sort of goal or dream to pursue? And yeah, things like this take time. This took us 15 years to really come to light. Growing the gap between your income and your expenses is hard. That means you have to make more money or spend less money. And how hard is that? It's so hard. But you need that dream. You need that goal to keep moving towards that gives you purpose and meaning in life. And that actually makes you happier too. You are saying, wow, with this 1 extra hour this week or these 5 extra hours this week that I'm going to find, I am going to move towards building a business or a small side hustle that I like. So I would say, yes, have that dream built out there. Make sure you know what you're moving towards. Grow that gap between your income and your expenses. And that gap becomes the power move that you can use to move towards this. Now, I never want to say becoming a business owner has no trouble and everybody should quit their jobs today. I really don't think that. I think that you should do those things with protection and with planning. And so one of those is to save up a whole bunch of money into a savings account. I really do like 6 months or 12 months of expenses to help you feel good, especially if you have a family to do these types of things. Also, proof that your business idea actually makes money, not just like, hey, I've made some business cards and a fancy website and ready to go. No, you have to make sure people are paying you money to do something. And then obviously support from your family and the time and wisdom to move it forward is very important. So the main thing I really do believe is having that dream or that goal in mind and keeping it at the front of your mind, because all of those other steps are going to be quite hard.
We'll get right back into it after a quick word from those who support the show. Here's something I believe more deeply every year. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't feel good physically, none of it actually matters. I work out every morning for about an hour or two before I sit down to create content. Newsletter, social posts, podcast episodes, all of it. And for years, I'd finish my workout, sit down at my desk, and by 1 p.m., I'd be staring at my computer like it owed me money, wondering why I couldn't think straight and had a headache. Turns out, I was just chronically underhydrated. Not, I need water dehydrated. I needed electrolytes. Sodium, potassium, magnesium. The stuff you actually lose when you sweat. That's where LMNT comes in. It's an electrolyte drink with 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium, and best part, 0 sugar, which means I can rehydrate without drinking what tastes like liquefied candy. So here's my new routine. I drink LMNT during or right after my workout, and I'm sharp all morning and into the afternoon. Then I take a walk in the woods, make more content, and when I get back, I have a Sparkling LMNT around 4 p.m., which is genuinely the most refreshing thing I have found. Then I work for a few more hours and still feel great. My favorite flavor? Mango chili. It's got a little heat, a little tang, and if you're the kind of person who thinks most electrolyte drinks taste like disappointment, this one doesn't. And if you can't handle the spice, watermelon salt is a close second. And here's the practical part. LMNT comes in tiny stick packs that take up almost 0 room. I just packed 150 sticks for my cross-country road trip to Arizona so I could stay hydrated in the desert, and it took up about as much space as a small t-shirt. And right now, they're offering a free sample pack with any purchase. So head to drinkelement.com/Tyler. That's drinklmnt.com/Tyler. And do try the mango chili. You'll either love it or think I'm insane. Either way, at least you'll be hydrated. How did it work for you? When you first started trying to monetize a life beyond a W-2, even though you say we should all want to do something hard, again, I think, there are many, many people who will say, I don't want to do something hard. Thank you for proposing that. But and let me even rephrase it. It's not that they don't want to do something hard. It's that I want to feel safe and secure. And you and I both know that one of the biggest parts of money is security. Tell me a little bit about your journey of how did you monetize it, and how did you convince your family and yourself that you would still be secure enough to be able to take a risk like this?
Sure. Well, I'll start with choose your hard.
Yeah.
If hard to you is oh my gosh, I cannot stand going to this corporate job anymore, and that's really hard. And it's okay, but then there's also this other hard over here that eventually gets you out of that, and then you're in a nice place of peace and prosperity. It's okay, do you want that hard path, or do you want to keep walking this mentally exhausting, corporate path? And so for me, at that time, it was around 2016. I was working hard in my corporate event marketing job and building clients and even building a team. And there was a moment in time where we had new management, and they called me into their office and they said, Andy, we're making a complete change here in the business. You are now reporting to this guy and you're working on this stuff. End of meeting. And I'm like, man, I really have no control over my life. I worked so hard for this company. I'm just a number that they're going to move around in different places that work for them. And then again, as I would say it, I was coming home and I was a very busy father with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I just needed something that I felt like I had ownership over. And at the time, I had been listening to podcasts. I loved podcasts. They were my sort of escape. And so I said, well, why don't I start my own podcast where I could connect with families, help them on their journey, share what we're doing, just sort of a regular guy sharing his financial journey with his family, but then also interview really smart people who are doing incredible things that I found inspiring. And then over the coming years, I figured out how to make a little bit of money from advertising and things like that and connecting with clients who wanted me to create content for them. So it turned into like a little mini side hustle. But that mini side hustle became the thing that I wanted to spend all of my time on. I loved it. Every moment I could spend on that just made me feel alive. So everything inside of me was like, okay, what can I do to continue to grow this and make it into something? So by the time we got to around, year 3 or 4, I started to make some decent money on it. So much so that I was getting contracts that were like a little conflicting with the amount of time that I could spend on that versus my corporate job. And I had been so jacked about this financial independence movement, FIRE movement, that my way out at the time was like rental properties. Okay, I'm going to buy a bunch of rental properties. So my wife and I went to go see one of those first rental properties, and it was one of these like horrible little teardowns. And she looked at me, she's like, you really want me to do this with you? This is not something I want to do. And I looked at her too, and I'm like, it's not something I want to do too. I'm not handy. I don't even know what I'm talking about. And so we got to this end of this road of 2019, early 2020, and she's like, hey, all this money you've been saving up to buy this rental property, why don't you just like take it and have it be your runway for this small business that you love so much? Like, go for it, man. And that was like the best words that could have ever come out of my wife's mouth.
Yeah.
And so I did. In January of 2020, I put in my resignation and just said, thank you so much. And so I went for it. I loved the first couple of months of entrepreneurship. I had this money saved up. I had clients with contracts that were paying me good money. And then March of 2020 came around. A global pandemic came in and slapped me right across the face and said, yeah, you thought you had this all figured out, man? I lost those contracts. My income plummeted. And I was scared, man. I was freaking out. Did I just make the worst mistake for my family ever? And I got into a little funk, man. I got into a little depression. I had some good people who were around me, my father, my friends, my wife, lifting me up, saying, hey, this is a really difficult time. I'm sure you'll get through it. And then I had another little friend called 12 months of FU money that said, you got this, man. You can figure this out. And through time and a lot of pivoting, I did figure it out. And 5 years later, the business is going really well. My wife and I both work 20 to 25 hours a week doing work that we enjoy. But if it weren't for that 12 months of money, that would have been very, very difficult. So if 12 months of money, which we only used 3 months of it, by the way, can survive me in a global pandemic, it is amazing what you might be able to do with a similar amount of money after leaving your corporate world.
Would that be your priority? Because it almost sounds like there are two things I'm hearing that I would, if I'm an audience member listening, I go, man, like, which would be more important, the 12 months of money saved up for something like this or a support network? Because it seems like you also had an incredible support network to go do this. And I'm wondering if one of the things missing with a lot of people is that person to make the impact like your wife did, where she said, go for it. And that you need that external voice sometimes to say or to validate the feelings you've been having and give you the support you might need to take a risk that is really difficult. Did you find that that was a pretty big reason? And if you hadn't had that, would you still have taken the same leap?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would, if I had to prioritize them, I would say your personal network. Absolutely. Having people around you, voices around you that are positive, that will be there for you when times are tough, yes, is light years more important than having a bunch of money.
that leads me to want to transition to something you talk about and we're going to get to the upcoming book, because I'm ecstatic, by the way, that you have finally decided to write this all down, because I've been listening to you for years. We've been chatting for years. I've been learning from you for years. Finally love the fact that you're coming out with all of it packaged in one place where I can pay the money, get the book, go from there. So we'll get to that. But one of the things that I know you address in the book is identity diversification. And you just kind of piqued my interest to ask about that just based on what you're saying, because so many of us, myself very much included, once you get to the adult world, and I'm putting that in quotes, you have kind of one main identity, and it tends to be your job, right? People identify so heavily with their job and with their career path. Can you explain a little bit about how this shift for you from working corporate, making perfectly great salary, and for all intents and purposes, having a family, having a house, how did this shift to kind of more part-time work open up this idea of identity diversification for you and your family?
Yeah, I think through some conversations that I've had with some really smart people, I learned about these different paths. And I remember speaking with a hospice doctor about, regrets that people had at the end of their lives. And a lot of the regrets that kept coming back were, I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time working at my job or just working in general. Because depending on how your life goes, this could be something that you do the majority of your time. And then once you cease working, a lot of people can find a little bout of depression saying, well, I owned that identity of worker for so long. Now that I have retired and I'm not working, who am I? I feel like this bridge of part-time work allows you to still have the identity of worker, because it's important to be a worker and contribute to society and give back and have purpose and meaning. But there are so many other important identities that at least I've found through this journey that are great. I love exercising, being out in nature, taking care of my health. I also want to be a great husband. Before, when I was working corporate and letting that take over my life, and then also trying to fit in like the side hustle thing, I was squeezing my marriage, man, and that pushed us towards marriage counseling and a lot of other bad things, a lot of marriage fights. I think a lot of people think they get married and like, all right, box checked. It's like, no, man, marriage is a verb. You have to put some action into your marriage. You have to spend time together. You get to spend time together, man. This was not time I was dedicating to before when I was clogged up being corporate worker guy. So now that I have more free time, I am allocating in that to be an athlete, to be a good husband, to be a father, a friend, man. Being a friend is very important. I get together with my friends on Fridays. I cut that day out of my schedule, so I'm like getting together with my buddies for lunch. I went to watch a movie in the middle of the day with my friend the other day, just a funny comedy with my buddy, and like nobody was in the theater. It was like such a cool experience. It's like we rented out the entire theater for ourselves. Just things like that I didn't spend time doing. What else is out there besides worker? Like, let's find it and have some fun while doing it.
Do you think, and I'm just wondering because you just described this perfect life. I mean, every single thing you just said, I'm sure some people are listening and like, you've got to be kidding, man. Like like whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But like, we're not there. That's amazing.
I know. I hear you.
Do you feel like anybody, especially this last point you made about the identity of a friend at this point in your life, is it difficult for you being 43 years old and having found this middle path, being surrounded by so many who are not on this middle path? And you say that you get to go do things with friends on Friday, but would you not be very limited sometimes based on the fact that many of the people that you might want to spend time with are the ones grinding this 9 to 5? And so do they resent your path, or do you ever find yourself at night saying, guys, like, let me show you the secret. Like, come with me. You got to come with me.
Tyler, I would say that's the hardest part. It really is. Anytime you do something that is outside of the norm of society, you have to be strong enough to say, I'm going to do something that's outside of the norm of society, because that means I am casting myself to the side. But I am so passionate about this middle way that I really think that I would love society to move in this direction. And of course, it comes with financial privilege. It comes with, time wealth in order to do that. But I think it's worth pursuing, whether that happens at age 40 or age 55 or 60 or 70. Like, we got to move towards this so that we are enjoying more life than we are working. So I've tried to craft my week around, okay, what is a reasonable time for my friends to get together with me? But honestly, a lot of my life is filled with a lot of responsibilities as a dad, as a husband. We own a home. There's a lot of work to do here at this house.
Plenty to keep you busy.
It is. It's plenty to keep me busy. So yeah, it has been difficult. Some things that we say yes to now, others can't say yes to. So it does make it a little more difficult. But I just try to surround myself with people who are moving in that direction, or at least care about the things that I care about too. That might be, me changing, who I've been friends with classically, and moving towards people who have this type of lifestyle. But I haven't had to say goodbye to any friends yet. I guess we'll say that.
Well, now I do want to close by obviously talking about, again, how excited I am about the fact that you wrote this all down. Could you tell me a little bit about when you decided to finally package this all in the format for us, thankfully, to be able to just digest at our own leisure? Tell me, what's the book titled? When is it available? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, the book is called Own Your Time. It is the 10 financial steps families can take to put family first and escape the corporate grind. And it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you can get books. We're in pre-order stage right now. It comes out on January 21st. And I wrote it because this was like bursting inside of me, man. I've been talking about it for 10 years. And I got approached by a great publisher, Wiley, said, hey, can you put this together and, make it easy for people to digest? And I said, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Can I?
Can I please, And so I'm pumped to get it out there, man. Absolutely.
And tell me the three, because I know, at least I'll be very selfish here. When I used to listen to podcasts, the number one thing I wanted at the end of any podcast was an action item. I'd get so fired up throughout the show, and then I'm like, all right, now give me something to do. So if you could kind of just take the best of the best of what you've got in that text and say, right now, for my 50-year-old listener who's you've piqued their interest, you've got their attention, they too would like to go see movies on Fridays and not go do this corporate grind and get a little time back.
Yeah.
What are the three most important action items that someone could take to just start, not necessarily to get there, but the things that you would say through your years 0 to 15 and through the writing of this book, you've just kind of gotten down to like steps 1, 2, and 3. These are the start.
Yeah, sure. The first one would be, and something that I don't think people do enough, is to simply take some time to dream. Take some time out of your day, 5, 10, 15 minutes, to write down where you want your life to go over the next 5 years, 10 years, and really put it out there. What would be your best life? And sometimes people have difficulty with this dreaming idea or really writing down goals in general. So I like to use this other methodology of pretend you just walked to your mailbox and you found a check for $5 million and it's got your name on it. And there's no taxes or any, BS like that. It's like you get the $5 million in your account. What is the first thing that you stop doing immediately? Not like what you'd buy with it, but what would you stop doing immediately? That's an opportunity for hacking away at the unessential, as our friend Bruce Lee likes to say. What are we doing in our lives right now that you'd stop doing immediately because you don't have to worry about the resource of money anymore? Is that, okay, I would quit my soul-sucking job immediately. Well, maybe I wouldn't quit it immediately. I kind of like what I do, but maybe I would just do it like 20 hours or 30 hours a week or 10 hours a week. Great. You've got some goals now. You've got some dreams. You've got some motivation to move forward. And then with that motivation, I'd say number 2 is to start looking deeply into your money. How much is coming in and where is it going? And then make sure your money is being utilized according to those values and those dreams. And make sure that that's happening immediately. And then once you find that gap, start moving it towards saving, investing towards those goals and dreams. Those would be the 3 steps.
It's amazing. Now I'm just fired up. Now I want to go get that check for $5 million.
There you go.
I love it. The way you phrased it is perfect because I've heard the lottery exercise enough times, and you hit me with the curveball there to say, what would you stop doing? And what is not interesting to me. And I'm just thinking of my laundry list of friends and family who I know I could probably tell you exactly what the number one thing is. And so, of course, the next logical step is then just saying, well, why don't you try to figure out how to mitigate that headache that you seem to hate so very, very much?
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate this opportunity to talk about this.
I appreciate it. Again, I don't have guests on the show. This is all selfish for me, Andy. I just have people on so I can continue to learn from the people who have it down to a science. And can you tell us where else can people find you if they want to go hear you beyond the book and kind of continue this journey and hear more stories from people that you chat with on a regular basis?
Absolutely. I have a podcast called Marriage, Kids, and Money. It's focused on helping families build wealth and happiness. And the happiness piece is extremely important, as we're talking about, and that comes with time freedom. So that's why Own Your Time, the book, fits well with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and spending any of your time with me today. I appreciate it, and I'll look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks for tuning in to your Money Guide on the Side. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to visit my website at tylergardner.com for even more helpful resources and insights. And if you are interested in receiving some quick and actionable guidance each week, don't forget to sign up for my weekly newsletter, where each Sunday I share 3 actionable financial ideas to help you take control of your money and investments. You can find the sign-up link on my website, tylergardner.com, or on any of my socials at socialcapofficial. Until next time, I'm Tyler Gardner, your money guide on the side, and I truly hope this episode got you one step closer to where you need to be.